Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the broadcast. It is Monday, March 25th, 2019. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you very much for being with me here for another edition of the broadcast. Got a lot to talk about and get into on the show for you here, so strap in, get ready. Hope you're all doing well out there. Well, I've already gotten several emails and comments from people already. Just as I predicted. No surprises here with the whole Mueller investigation thing. Just as I told you when it first broke out, even before the investigation really started. I told you nothing's ever going to come of this. Nothing's going to come out of this because you can't expose any of this without exposing both the left and the right and the whole political system that's been in bed with the Russians for decades. That's the whole thing. And boom, there it is, just like I predicted. So no surprises there. And, this is just like I covered in Volume 1 of the Spellcasters, which came out in 2016. Came out before the election even happened. And there I was showing you the connections to, the stuff with Scientology. Well, they were using the OT level training things and the whole... it's kind of like the confession booths for Catholics, the auditing sessions, and they were taking information gleaned in these auditing sessions and selling it off to the Russians, to the highest bidder. This was going on back then. This was going on in tandem, in conjunction with the CIA. You can go back to you can go back to the Kennedy assassination. You can go back to, why did Oswald have a Russian bride? We know he was CIA. That's because, he was a double agent working for the Russians and for the CIA, because we were working in tandem with the Russians even back then, all through the Cold War, all of that. And then in my 2009 film, it's the 10-year anniversary of The Secret Right, Volume 1. And, I've got that segment in there on Congressman Larry McDonald. Larry McDonald was a Council for National Policy, John Birch Society guy. He was like, he was, for lack of a better comparison, he was really kind of like the Alex Jones of his day. He was, except, much higher level. This guy was a congressman, but he was top dog in the John Birch Society, CIA connected. He talked about New World Order conspiracy theories and anti-gun stuff and everything else. And this guy was a fucking spy, double agent, working with the Russians, while on the other hand, talking about freedom and liberty and the New World Order and praising the John Birch City. Who does that sound familiar to? And he was killed when in 1984. Interesting, a lot of stuff happened that year. We'll talk more about that later in the broadcast. But this guy was on an airplane. Interesting enough, it was Flight 007. Now, is that not fucking telling? And it was a Korean Air flight that Larry McDonald was on that got forced into Soviet aerospace, supposedly, by Soviet Russian fighter jets, and then once crossed over into restricted Russian airspace, was shot down, killing everybody on board, including Larry McDonald. And even his widow went on record and said that this wasn't an accident, this was done on purpose, and that they shot this airliner down on purpose specifically because Larry McDonald was on board. Now, he was here in America, he was Mr. Anti-Communist and this and that and the other, but that's what a lot of these, just like the same thing with Reagan. Reagan was the head of the Screen Actors Guild in Hollywood. And here's Reagan narking all his friends and selling out all his friends as being communists. Meanwhile, he was a commie himself. You see what I'm saying? None of this is new. I can't believe, it's unbelievable to me. And this to me is how pervasive the mind control and the programming is. This one issue right here, to me, is one of the main things that the public at large still cannot wrap their minds around and still can't understand. And it's more than just the public at large. So many so-called truth seekers and everything else can't wrap their mind around this stuff. They can't wrap their minds. They're still believing the propaganda of the whole communist thing, not knowing we've been run and taken over and been colluding with communists for literally 50, 60 years. This is all a part of the phony staged theater to keep us all enslaved and in a state of constant war. That's what this is all about. The Clintons did deals with the Russians. Reagan did deals with the Russians. Fucking Trump's been in bed with the Russians and the Russian mob and all this shit for decades. His dad was CIA too. All this stuff, man. It all connects together. But you can't bring down one without bringing down the other. And the truth of all this stuff coming out, if they would have really allowed... Why do you think they're making Mueller stay fucking silent on all this shit? It's not because of what they found or didn't find about Trump or his campaign or anything else. It's about what they did find, showing that, wait a minute, fucking everybody's in bed with these guys. And this shit, if this would have come out, it would have, you got to understand, this has been going on for so long, and it's so pervasive, and it's so deep, and it connects to so many world events, that the true knowledge of this stuff coming out had the power, is a serious national security risk, and not just a national security risk for the United States, but for all nations. Because it would have shown this collusion that's been going on with Russia for decades, with the United States, and how all parties, left, right, center, doesn't matter, have all been involved in this, and it would have sparked off World War III with Russia. Russia was probably going to launch some fucking missiles on us pretty quickly had the real truth of this stuff come out. So just like I told you, this is exactly the conclusion I told you was going to happen. And that's why these dumbass, lefty liberals, they can't see the forest for the trees. So they still think they're going to go after Trump on all this stuff. And meanwhile, they have no idea that their own sacred cows in their political party are just as guilty as he is. And that's why none of the truth of this stuff is going to come out. That's the real fact of the matter. I mean, Jones, Corsi, all these guys. I mean, that's what I told you in Spellcasters 1, man. Russia Today. You think it's a coincidence when Russia Today first came online? They started having Jones and Luke Radowski and all the truther people on there on the regular. I mean, it's not a conspiracy theory who owns Russia Today. These guys have all been in bed with Russia for many years. And this is all part of an ongoing plan that all these people, no matter what part of the phony political spectrum they fall on, or have been involved in. And that's the real deal. That's it in a nutshell. So, there you go. I just as I expected, this is good. If you have a great, it wasn't hard to predict that this is what was going to happen. If you understand and have been looking at this stuff and exposing these guys as long as I have, that was one of the things that was a real epiphany for me when I started researching the CMP stuff and getting into that. Was I understand, I get it. It was hard for me to wrap my mind around it first too, but we've been so programmed And we've been led to believe all these years that, Russia's always been the big enemy. Meanwhile, we've been colluding and working with Russia behind the scenes and lying to the general public about it for literal decades. And it continues and it goes on. And nobody has been non-complicit in this. The other big thing that there was a revelation for me when I first got into doing the CMP research. By the way, the Secret Right Volume 1, which is 10 years old this year, the new 10-year anniversary remaster with 1.5 attached to it, edited into it. So 25 minutes of more additional footage than what's in the original is on sale in the download store right now. So get that. But I was, the biggest revelation for me, because I've talked about this many times, but I just knew instinctively at a very young age, just from what books and whatnot I'd read up to that point, that politics was a scam, left is a scam, right is a scam. It's all politics, and only criminals get involved in politics because it's a criminal system, so only criminals can get involved in it. So it doesn't matter who it is, left, right, they're all a part of this criminal system. They're complicit in it. So that's, for that's the reason why I knew at 17 years old. I remember going to Lollapalooza in 1994, and they had people trying to register you to vote. And I remember telling this is 1994, man. I remember telling the fucking little college nitwit that came up to try to get me to register to vote. I remember telling him, why would I want to do that? It's all bullshit, left, right, doesn't matter. It's all the same people that are here just to gangbang us into submission. I mean, she was just completely offended, ran away. Like, yeah, you better run away, cunt. Fuck. But, I got to tell you, even instinctively knowing that and being able to see that for yourself is completely different than, during the course of the research into the CMP and the whole secret right stuff, finding out and learning and seeing, tracing back these groups like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission and all these different left-wing sort of political groups and stuff that control the left-wing politics, tracing back where their funding comes from, and then tracing that exact same path to who funds the CMP and the other offshoot groups, Heritage Foundation, all the other right-wing groups and the rest of it, and you trace them all back, and they all trace back to the London School of Economics, Fabian Socialist Society, the London School of the London School of Economics is one, the Fabian Society, and then the Royal Institute of International Affairs. Those all tie into Central European bankers, Rothschilds, etc., and all money and proceeds feed from those groups into both left and right wing groups like the CFR and the CMP on the right and whatnot. And that was I can remember going, oh my God. Because it's one thing, to have that gut feeling or to know or to be able to basically come to the conclusion on your own from research that, party politics is a scam. But when when you're inadvertently through other research, literally find that to be true, because all these groups that control the parties are all funded from the same Central European banker scum. It was really, it really was an epiphany. It blew me back because I was like, holy shit, man. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is not a theory at all. This is a fact. And very few people even know this. And if you could get people to understand that and see that for themselves, you could make people understand that voting, and all that sort of being a part of, considering yourself part of any political party, left or right, is truly a sham. And there is no such thing as democracy in our country. It's just, it's stage theater. It's disguised. It's the illusion, the illusion of choice, the illusion of freedom. Meanwhile, it's business as usual, and everything's still funded and controlled by the same people it's been controlled by for thousands of years, the money changers. So, again, that was a huge thing for me in understanding. But yeah, like I said, with the whole Russian thing, this is exactly how I knew it was going to come out. I knew it is when I first started, hearing truthers and stuff talk about Russia as being on our side and Russia wants truth. That's when I was like, oh man, all this stuff is exactly what I suspected that that it is and was and still is. So this happened a couple weeks ago. I hadn't had a chance to comment and talk about this. He died a few weeks ago. Ding dong. This is fucking great news. God, I've been waiting. I have been waiting for years for this news to come. And it's finally come. Ding dong, the cocksucker is dead. Ralph Hall, former Rockwall representative who was oldest to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives, dies at 95. Ding fucking dong. Man, this fucking cocksucker right here, let me tell you, this guy has been holding up and been the main thing standing in the way of Rockwall digs for decades. 4 decades. High-level Freemason. This guy's worked on both sides of the political aisle. He's been a liberal. He's been a Democrat. He's been a Republican. He was a CMP member. I told you years ago I was waiting for this motherfucker to die. His wife finally died a few years ago, and then now he died. Because I've been waiting to find out when the fucking estate sale is going to go on at this motherfucker's house. I've been trying to find any information. I can't find any. If anybody out there wants to dig and research, see if they can come up with anything, I'd love to know about it. I know he lived in Rockwall, but I cannot find, I guess it must be unlisted. I cannot find his address in Rockwall. His family goes back to his family goes back to the founding of Rockwall. They were the first bankers. Go figure that, huh? The scum doesn't fall far from the scum tree, does it? They were the first bankers. Hall Bank was the first bank in Rockwall. Right there in the old downtown square where the old courthouse sits on top of the domed rock chamber that was discovered. But he is the guy that was seen. There was a whole bunch of witnesses and inmate. Back then, if you go to Rockwall now, they have this big. A few years ago, they built this new courthouse that's kind of off by Interstate 30. And I remember when I was freaking out when I was going out there doing Rockwall research stuff when they were building this thing, because the fucking thing looks like, it just looks like King David's palace or something. it just looks like a fucking Masonic Hebrew fucking palace. But the old Rockwall courthouse downtown, the downtown square, where they have some of the rocks from the actual Rockwall cemented together, not even how they were stacked in the fucking wall either. Just threw them up there and threw some cement on them. They did this back in the 70s. But you can actually go. It's still there today. It's got a little monument, and it's on the eastern side of the old Rockwall courthouse. But up in the top, I can remember this when I was a kid. I used to drive through there with my grandparents going out to eat and stuff. My grandpa would always tell me back in the 80s when I was a kid, he was like, "Hey, look up there. You can see the jailbirds, the inmates hanging out of the top of because they had the jail on top of the old courthouse back then, because it was still just a real small town back then. It's grown huge now, but not coincidentally enough, right after John Lindsay did his dig in 1999, it went right after that, and Ralph Hall came out and shut him down because he had the whole support of Rockwall behind him for a long time. John Lindsay did. Everybody was supporting his dig and everything. And then he found out the story about Ralph Hall being seen with 2 other gentlemen in the middle of the night hauling this 2.5 ton garnet stone called the Sanders Stone. I talk about this in the Lost Secrets of Ancient America, that was uncovered, I believe, in the 50s or 60s by a gentleman. And nobody's ever been able to find anything on this guy. I think his name was Thomas Sanders or something like that. But they called it the Sanders Stone because this guy uncovered this 2.5 ton garnet stone that had all these unidentified hieroglyphics on it. And Congressman Ralph Hall and two other gentlemen were seen back in the 1980s in the old Rockwall courthouse in the middle of the night. They were seen by inmates hauling this rock out, basically heisting this stone that was in the basement of the Rockwall courthouse, heisting it out in the middle of the night. And Lindsay started doing his own investigation into that with the locals. And come to find out, he learned that 2.5 ton garnet hieroglyphic stone, the Sanderstone, was actually being held at Congressman Ralph Hall's house. And as soon as he started poking his nose around, asking questions, boom, that was it. Dig shut down. He had funding from several universities, all cut. They basically ran him out of town on a rail. He was getting all kinds of threats. He had, I could never pry out of him exactly who these guys are or were, whether they were men in black or Vatican representatives. I said both, and he kind of indicated to me both. And I was like, well, I've never heard of, heard of Vatican representatives. I've heard of men in black. I've heard of CIA guys. He without saying it, he was indicating to me these guys were all three, which is just odd. He said that 2 guys dressed in black suits immediately after this came to his house and threatened him and told him to quit looking into the Rockwall thing. Don't bring it up anymore. Don't ever, speak to Ralph Hall again, all this stuff. So that's been my thing. I'm like, well, I'm waiting for this motherfucker to die because they got to have an estate sale over there. I'm finding out where the motherfucking estate sale is. Going out there with a goddamn dump truck. Yeah, I want that. What, that big fucking rock? Yeah. How much for the big rock? I got $20 in a dump truck. How about it? No, seriously. If I could track down where he's at and they're having an estate sale, I guarantee you I could find some motherfuckers that will help me go get that fucking thing. But, yeah. Hey, that's good news, though. But it's interesting because I was doing some research trying to find out his address and stuff. And I mentioned him being a Freemason. There's a little local Freemason lodge there in Rockwall. And over the last 10 years or so, they've done some construction downtown. So they've kind of they've rerouted some of the streets, and it's Highway 544 that runs through there. But it's interesting is the area that runs around kind of through downtown by where the old little courthouse is, it cuts through right around where that little Masonic lodge is. And they renamed that little area of Highway 544 that runs through there. They renamed it several years ago, Ralph Hall Way or Ralph Hall Lane or something, Ralph Hall Parkway. So, and it's interesting. So whenever you go and you try to do any research on Ralph Hall's address, all the search results all pull everything from addresses being on Ralph Hall Parkway or whatever it is. So it just muddles the search results and you can't find anything. And I was sitting there going, well, that had to have been intentional, because that's just been Highway 544 running through there for years, for decades, since time immemorial, right? All of a sudden over the past several years, specifically since I've done all my Rockwall investigations and put out all of my work and been, kicking the dust up over there again. Boy, I tell you what, it's very interesting. The local yokels around there. I mean, a lot of, there's a lot of newer people there. They don't know anything about the Rockwall, and they just know what people tell them. But if you get somebody who's an old local yokel and you start talking about it, it's very interesting to see how uncomfortable they get real quick. They don't care what information you got. They don't want to hear it. They don't give a shit. They want the narrative to stay just like it is. And this is exactly why all the, Rockwall really for years was just sleepy old little small town. But it was after all the stuff happened with Ralph Hall and with John Lindsay after the last dig that all of a sudden all the areas and all where it was just country and fields and nothing for decades. Because I lived out and around that area all the time, went through Rockwall all the time for decades. And all of a sudden, property values start going through the roof. All these big, new, gigantic, multi-million-dollar homes start being built specifically on areas where Rockwall is at. That's, And listen, I haven't given up on doing a Rockwall thing, but because people still ask me about it all the time. But I mean, it's a pipe dream. I mean, if you really want to get down to it, it's a fucking pipe dream. There has to be a million things that have to line up exactly right for it to happen. And it's going to take a lot of money. You know, at least I would say probably $2 million at least, because you're not going to be able to do this on land you don't own. So first, you're going to have to pay for. What I really want to do more than anything else is have LiDAR scans done. That's the main thing. To me, I would rather get LiDAR scans done before ever having to dig. You would really need to anyway. But now that the technology is there, you can hire these companies that have drones that use LiDAR. And if you're not familiar with what LiDAR does, it actually can look through levels and surface objects and everything and go way, way down under the ground and show you a 3D topographical image of everything under the ground. And I've said for years, if we do this, you're going to find other structures other than just the rock wall in the immediate area around there that people haven't known about. But again, you know, Dallas continues to expand out. You know, it used to not be, now it's Rockwall and all that area. It's really the suburbs of Dallas. It used to just kind of be, you know, kind of the more rural area. But, you know, that a lot of things would have to line up. There would have to be you'd have to get 100% confirmation that you've got an area that has a wall on it. You then have to be able to buy that property. And then after that, it's just going to be keeping the whole thing a secret. You know, you have to fence off your area, whatever the little small area, whatever area you're digging the wall out, you're going to need to have enclosed, because now they got satellites, they got drones. You know, as soon as you start doing a dig, people are going to know about it. So you got to have a way to be able to do it under wraps, do it on property. I mean, it's going to be millions of dollars. So, you know, I tried doing it with a limited, small budget, and just like people who try to do it before me, you just continue to find, you just continue to hit pitfall after pitfall. But it's interesting that at every fucking dig that's ever been done, even when American Earth did their little bullshit, all American Earth did on their show, they didn't actually do a new dig. All they did was go out to the original site. It was a farm that a family owned, where John Lindsay did all his work and already done all the massive months and months of breaking through the blue shale to get to the actual wall. All they did was go out with fucking, you know, earth movers and pull the dirt off of the Lindsay dig from 99. That's all they did. It wasn't a new dig. They tried to act like that was a brand new dig that they did. It was not. It was not. It was just the original Lindsay dig from 99. They went out and they uncovered it. So, that being the only dig that's been done in the past 20 years, the only other dig done before that was going back to the 1970s. But I mean, I know lots of spots, man. I know lots of spots. I mean, I don't think the places are for sale, but there's one spot. It's fucking crazy, because it just shows you how old we're talking here with this thing, you know. 200, 350,000 years on up. There's one spot where it runs under a creek, and you can actually see some of the stones sticking out of the side of the creek bed walls, because this thing is so fucking old that these creeks and stuff didn't even exist yet when this fucking thing was built. These waterways that's how nuts it is. That's how old it is. So there's a spot, and you can kind of drive down and get almost to where it's at off 544. But you can definitely go past the creek where it's, because I used to go, I remember even when I was like 10 or 11 years old, going to visit or going deer hunting with my dad in East Texas, and we'd have to go through Rockwall on our way to East Texas, and there's this creek, and it's on 544, and I remember always just looking down it when I was a kid, and just, if you looked, you could see way far down how far the creek went, and just looked prehistoric down there. And so I was really shocked years later when I was told about the parts of the wall that you can see sticking out, but you've got to, you got to be in a canoe. It's dangerous to do it. I've never done it. It's because number one, you're trespassing on somebody's property no matter what you do, and it's a creek, and and then it dumps out into the big Lake Ray Hubbard that they built, of course, to cover up the rock wall. But I'm not going to give up hope, man. I've gotten too many. I think it's going to happen eventually. I think we will make it happen eventually, but, time is not on our side. It's every day that goes by makes it more and more difficult. Eventually, they're going to have every single fucking square inch of that thing covered by something, a business, a fucking, house or whatever. And there's not going to be, right now, there's still a lot of abundant uncovered places where you could get some land and have a dig out there, but it's not going to be that. Another 10 years, probably not going to be any. So, but yeah, Ralph Hall kicking the bucket, though, is at least a step in the right direction. Man. It's interesting, though, too. Like I said, I've talked about this before, but I just think it's fascinating also that, the guy that discovered the wall, T.U. Wade, was like his son or his grandson that went on to be, the Dallas district attorney when Kennedy was assassinated. He's the Wade in the whole Roe versus Wade thing. He was the longest sitting district attorney in Dallas history. Or American history, rather, not just Dallas history. Longest sitting district attorney in American history. So interesting that you'd have two of those guys, and they both lived fuck all forever. And there's all sorts of stories about the, rejuvenating properties of the wall and all that stuff. Interesting, though, I just happened to glance down and see this on the story about Ralph Hall. It says, the Rockwall Republican died of natural causes at his home overlooking Lake Ray Hubbard. Boom! Well, then I know pretty much exactly where he lived then. And yes, that's just a hop, skip, and a jump from the newly named Ralph Hall Parkway or whatever. So, yeah, his home overlooking Lake Ray Hubbard. Yeah, and where those spots that where the houses are that overlook Lake Ray Hubbard are where the fucking wall is buried under. So just as I had suspected, and again, just a right down the street from where the old Rockwall courthouse is, where he would have done the fucking. So when they did that heist of that 2.5-ton garnet stone back in the 80s, shit, man, they didn't even have to go a quarter of a mile back to his house. It's nothing. It's right down the street. So that's interesting. So yeah, I didn't even know. I thought about going. They had a public visitation, so I thought about going, sniffing around. But there were some spooks up in that motherfucker. They probably buried him with that rock. I don't know. That motherfucker has an estate sale, though. I'm going. Fuck that. What else we got? We got a lot more to talk about here for you on the show tonight. Night before last, I did an experiment. And I guess depending on how you want to look at this, you could say experiment successful, experiment failed. Either way, it's frustrating. And this exactly proves my point. When I make these documentary films, I spend all this money and all this time and effort to make them. It's just like anybody else that makes anything else. If somebody slaves over anything, an artist enslaves over whatever it might be, a piece of art or a sculpture, or the people they're not doing this for their health. They're doing this because they want to be able to be paid for their work, so that they can do more work to put out there. So as an experiment, I did this. I tell you, I did this 5-part. I put off putting my films out, Spellcasters 2 and 3, to do this 5-part Mystery Hollywood series. And I'm telling you, it's to me, it's the most important thing I've ever done. The information that's in part 3 and 4, this presentation is fucking unbelievable. It's mind-blowing. I think it's way more mind-blowing. It's on par with the Rockwall stuff and the CMP stuff, but it's even more crazy and out there and even more important. And if you haven't seen these, it's your loss. It really is. And you can't spend $10 to buy, but you can spend $10 to have, you have enough money to have a phone and an internet connection. I just don't buy any of the excuses. I'm tired of it. I'm over it. I'm sick of hearing the excuses. I don't want to hear them anymore. I've been doing this way too long. I heard the same excuses over and over and over and over from every single person. But I just as an experiment, I said, look, I'm going to prove my point. This is exactly what I'm talking about. So I put part 1 up on YouTube the other night and I had it up there for 12 hours. And I said, this will either, be seen by people as, oh, hey, it's a bonus. I got to see part 1 free. Now I can buy the other 4 parts in the download shop. And I had it up for 12 hours. It had over 500 views. And we didn't make one single sale. And I pulled it down. And I got emails from people who haven't bought any of the other parts wanting to know why it got taken down. And that's exactly why it got taken down. You understand? I mean, I can't tell you how frustrating it is. I've worn myself out repeating this, and I hate repeating myself more than anything else. But I continue to have to fucking rephrase because of the truth. I barely, every month, I'm wondering whether I'm going to be out of my ass or not. It's month to month to month here. It doesn't matter how hard I work. It doesn't matter how many hours I put in. Do you know of anybody else that would do any job? And no matter how hard you work at it, no matter how much of your life and your time and money you put into it, that none of that matters. You got people making millions of dollars off these shows, seeing their listeners and viewers, supporters as nothing but fucking, an ATM machine for themselves. That's all they see people as. Selling you fucking dick pills and the, fucking supplements and fucking gold, whatever it might be, fucking toilets, people selling fucking underwear, manscaping utensils. I mean, just ridiculous, most stupid, ridiculous shit you can imagine. And I'm not trying to get rich. I've never wanted to be rich. I'm not trying to be famous. All I want to be able to do is to stay alive every month, have enough money to pay the operating costs, to pay the rent for the studio, to pay the electric bill, to pay the internet bill, to pay the cost it costs to have the download shop open. That's a fee. To have the membership archives, that's a monthly fee. All I want is to be able to continue. I don't want a glass bottom boat like Alex Jones or a fucking, I don't even own a car. I don't want a fucking fast car or I just want to be able to survive and live every month. Yet I put that thing up and we had 500 people in 12 hours watch it, and yet not a one of them bought the rest of the series. Do you understand if all 500 of those people went and bought that series right now, that it would yield enough money for us to be able to stay alive and do our work for a year without having to have any fundraisers? Can you conceive that? That's why I'm fucking pissed. That right there is why I'm pissed. Over 500 people could watch that part 1, but not a one of you could go and fucking buy the whole series. If every one of you went and bought the series, all 500 of you that watched that went and bought the whole series right now, I could fund these operations for an entire year and never have to have one single solid fundraiser or ask people to donate and contribute, not once. If people contributed or actually even just bought, this is my work. This is my life. This is what I do. But it's just greedy fucking people who don't give a shit what I have to put in to do this or what I uncover. They just want to know what you know, and they want it for nothing. And you people are scum. You're a worse enemy than the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and all these other motherfuckers combined. Because you don't give a shit what sacrifices that I've had to make personally in my life and continue to make every single day to do this for no other reason than I care about humanity. And I care about mankind. And I am a literal threat to what they do. And all I want is enough money to fucking make it month to month. I'm not trying to fucking be rich or famous or make millions and millions of dollars, $50,000, $100,000 an episode like all these other shills and asshats. I've never sold out. Even when I had chances to do it, I've always stayed true, and I always give it to you straight. So, you know what? My conscience is clear. It's the other you out, the 500 of you that watched that for free, but yet you won't go. And it's for your benefit, not mine. I tell you right now, you're going to buy that series. It's the best money that you spent on this type of work ever. Because it's my years and years of looking at this stuff long before it was popular on the internet and being able to draw on that and pull it into new things that makes my work unique and worth supporting. So that's it. I just had to, again, I guess depending on how you look at it, you could say it's a failed experiment. You could say it's a successful experiment. I mean, depending on how, what where you're coming from. If you're coming from the aspect of it being, an experiment to, hopefully get people to buy the rest of the parts, that's a total fail. But if it's an experiment in terms of proving my point, I mean, again, I talked about my numbers on the show not too long ago, 16,000 subscribers. We're lucky to get 15 people a month to donate and contribute. There's nobody else that's doing it on my level. There's nobody else that makes these type of films like this with the information I have. There's nobody else, man. Imagine what we could do if people would just do the right thing and go and just buy the work I put out. That's all I'm asking you to do. One of our commenters, he said, if everybody in Josh's, of all of his subscribers donated $1, think about every month, think about that. Yeah, but that's a pipe dream too. That's never going to happen. You can't get 16,000 people to give a nickel, much less $1 every month. But it doesn't even take that. If we had 20 people this week contribute $100, think about this. Let me break this down for you. If 20 people contribute $100 each this week, that's $2,000. If 20 people donated $100 each this week, it would be enough to cover all of our operating costs that are going to be due next week. It would be enough to cover all that, and it would be enough to give me a little bit of budget to work with as I'm finishing Spellcasters 2 and then 3 right behind it. That's all it would take. And we're not even talking about 16,000 plus subscribers contribute. We're talking about 20 people out of 16,000 plus. Because, again, not everybody that listens is a subscriber. We talked about that last time. That's it. 20 people donating $100 this week is enough to cover all of our bills for the entire month and cover the rest of the budget for 2 whole films. I challenge you to find anybody else on the face of the planet that can do that much with so little money. So that's why I get mad about it, man. I don't get mad about it because, I'm not going to be able to afford a new Porsche next week. Got to get my subscribers up. All these other asshats, guys fucking making millions of dollars fucking playing video games and sheeple watching them. Give me a fucking break sandwich. God damn. Or let's just say we had, one person there, that could afford to do it. One person contributed $2,000 a week. That's enough to cover all of our operating costs of the month and put out 2 films. But it wouldn't even take that. It would take 20 people. There are 20 people in our audience. I know for an absolute unadulterated fact they could contribute $100 this week, and that's enough to cover all of our operating costs and enough to get out 2 films I'm working on that are going to be out the next month. So yeah, that shit did make me mad, and yeah, I have a right to fucking talk about it. Let me do some more math here. Let's see. Conversely on that, look at this. Conversely on that, over 500 people watched that part 1 that I put up and took down in the first, and it was up for less than 12 hours, and over 500 views. If 40 of you, just 40 of you, that's all it would take. 40 of you that watched that part 1. If 40 of the 500, over 500 of you that watched that part 1, if just 40 of you would decide to go and buy the full 5-part series out of my download shop this week, that would pretty much cover, maybe within, after fees and stuff, maybe within $100 to $200, but that would, same result. That would be enough money. If 40 of the 500 of you went and bought all 5 parts this week, that would be enough money to cover all our operating costs for the month and give you enough left over for an operating budget to be able to finish the Spillcaster 2, which I'm very close to being done with, and then 3 right after that. So this is not an outrageous request, man. I'm not asking for the world here. I'm just asking for the people that we do have that watch my films to buy the stuff I put out so we can continue, so I can do more work. And yeah, it makes me mad and frustrated. Not a one of you would work at a job for 12 fucking years without a paycheck, without benefits, without anything, and not even knowing month to month if you're going to be out on your ass or not, and do it for no other reason than you care about fucking mankind. This is my life. This is what I do. I worked all the shit jobs and dunked all my savings, what little savings I had, into all this when I started this in 2007. This is not a hobby, okay? All the stuff that I found and uncovered happened because I've been full-time dedicated to this for over 10 years. I worked in a sandwich shop. I worked at fucking Pizza Hut for like 4 years. I did all that shit so I could get where I am, so I could get to a point where I could focus all my energy into this. And that happened 10 years ago in 2009. And I've been going ever since then. So I'm sorry, all the bullshit excuses, all that stuff, man, it doesn't fly with me anymore. I don't have time for it. I don't have time for the, oh, I'll support you win, or I'll make a donation win. Every year people say, oh, When I get my tax return, I'll make a contribution. Then tax return season comes and goes, and you never hear nothing back from these people. It happens 20 or 30 times every fucking year, you know. But I'm just supposed to act like every time somebody says that same thing, that somehow they're unique, and I should just accept what they're telling me because they're unique, and no one's ever said it to me. No, it's bullshit, man. It's just the same thing over and fucking over from people who can't and won't do dick themselves and won't make an effort to do anything themselves to affect change. But all you have to do to have a hand in that is to help my work and support my work. That's why, again, I repeat this, but it's the goddamn truth. All the people, that's why I always say support our work. And people go, why do you say our work? You always say you're a one-man operation. Who's our? Our is me and all the people who contribute and have contributed to keep my operations going every month and buy the films and help pay for the films to be made. I can't do any of this without people like that support my work. So it's all of ours. But again, I'm done ranting on that. I had to talk about it because it's frustrating. It's just frustrating to see over 500 people, not one single sale, and in less than 12 hours. Imagine what it would have been, how many views it would have had if it would have been more than double that had I left it up for 24 hours. And if all 500 of those people bought it, that's enough to fund us for a year, man. How can you not expect me to be fucking mad about that? Again, 40 of you do the right thing and go buy the thing. That's enough to cover all our operating costs for the month. And enough to give me a little bit to get the films out. I'm done. It's frustrating. If you were in my shoes, you'd be frustrated and pissed off too. And that's all. To the rest of you that do contribute and are going to contribute and have contributed, again, I'm not talking to you. And I have to say this for the benefit of the other people. So to those that do contribute and do stand with me and are here with me, again, words just can't even express to you how important you are to what I'm doing here. And, you make sacrifices too, just like I do. People make financial sacrifices for this show and for this work. And I want to salute all of you that do that. And putting, something up higher than yourself for the greater good, which is exactly my whole modus operandi behind why I started to do this in the first place. So when I hear from people and get contributions from people that feel that same way and get it and want to support my work because they know that's why I do it, man, that reciprocation just means everything. It really does. So again, thanks to everybody out there. And hey, get the contributions. Again, 20 people, just out of 16,000 something subscribers, 20 people, $100 this week. 20 people contributed $100 this week, and 20 people bought downloads this week. We'd be gravy. Let's see what else we got to get into in the news. The dreaded news. Oh, shit. Oh, here's a motherfucker. Yeah, I tell you what, this motherfucker right here. If there was ever a motherfucker that needed to be taken down, if anybody needs to go down, you got people going down for all this, the Me Too stuff and this, that, and the other. Now the whole college entry scandal thing going on. Man, if there's anybody that needs to go down, it's fucking Dr. Dre. That motherfucker needs to go down and go down hard. This fucking guy has engaged and been a part of so much criminality, and he has come out unscathed again and again. And now he's in the news because he made a post saying, yeah, my daughter she didn't have to cheat. Yeah, she got into USC without bribing or cheating her way in. Yeah, and then lo and behold, you find out that Dr. Dre and Jimmy Iovine donated $70 million to USC, and they named a fucking library or something after him. Give me a fucking break. And you think we don't know what that is? And we know where that money came from, too. At least I do. Man, so many people are either dead or in jail because of Dr. Dre. This guy needs to go down, man. He needs to go down hard. Worse than anybody I can really think of off the top of my head. Dr. Dre needs to go the fuck down. Bad. This guy, I'm just going to say it unequivocally. There's just no way to sugarcoat it. 100%, depending on which end of this you fall on, whether you think Tupac was shot and killed or whether you think that they staged the thing to make the people who were trying to kill him think he was killed, and then he escaped and assumed another identity, which is what I think happened. But either way, Dr. Dre's responsible for all of it. Suge Knight is not, and I know this surprises everybody. This surprised me after I did my own research into all this. Suge Knight is not the devil everybody thought he was. That's hard to fucking wrap your mind around. I get it. I know. I feel the same way. I felt the same way when I started uncovering this stuff. It's just hard, in light of the stories and stuff you've heard, to not think that Suge Knight is an absolute devil. When in fact, Suge Knight was the guy who was instrumental in alerting Tupac before the attempted assassination happened, that was going to go down, and helped him stage the whole thing with, staging the faking of his death and all that. But yeah, Dr. Dre, I mean, he got kicked off of, he was kicked out of death row, and there was a big, well-documented thing, and he wanted revenge. And to add insult to injury, after he was fired from Death Row Records, Tupac, on multiple occasions, and Suge Knight himself has talked about this in interviews subsequently, but on several occasions, Tupac outed Dr. Dre as a homosexual. He called him Dr. Gay. Holy fuck. I can't even look at Dr. Dre. Every time I see Dr. Dre now, I just think, Dr. Gay, what's going on, Dr. Gay? I mean, that's fucking hilarious. That's what Tupac called him, Dr. Gay. And then I think it was wasn't it on the Machiavelli Kill Illuminati album? Wasn't it that one where he said, California Love, Part 2, without gay ass Dre. That's a well-known thing. Suge Knight talked about it. Suge Knight, according to Suge Knight, 90%, this is according to Suge Knight, 90% of, and I don't know from what era, I don't know if he's talking about the 90s era or the current era, whatever, but according to Suge Knight, 90% of the big hip-hop stars are closet homosexuals. And, there's some guy named Bruce that was fucking Dr. Dre's, the dude that would fuck Dr. Dre up the butt and shit. And, listen, now it's not a big thing. You got to put yourself in the context. Back in the 90s, man, there have always been people, and probably always will be, that are, closeted homosexuals, no matter, what the acceptance levels reach in the eyes of the general public. But back in those days, man, that was hardcore. For him to out Dre on record like that, man, it was a perfect play. They wanted to get revenge. He was their biggest. He got fired. Dre gets fired from, he was the big money maker. He was a big producer. He gets fired from over there. Tupac becomes the big deal at death row. And then they add insult to injury with outing him as a homosexual. They wanted revenge. There was, close to $1 billion was denuded, stolen, and disappeared from the coffers of Death Row Records in the days, weeks, and months immediately preceding the death of Tupac. Why do you think they set that up? That whole Orlando Anderson thing that they still try to. Orlando Anderson is nothing but the modern day fucking Oswald. He's a patsy, he's a fall guy, and he was eliminated after the fact so that it could never be contested and that narrative could be spun. The whole thing was a setup. That's why they set up the thing that got Suge on a probation violation for that fight. Because the death of Tupac not only got Tupac killed, biggest artist in Death Row killed, but also got the Kingpin locked up at the exact same time. This was a carefully planned out and constructed plan. And during that time, think about this. There weren't, maybe Atlantic or fucking Warner Electra Atlantic or one of those conglomerates in the 90s. But for what essentially was an independently created record label to have upwards of $700 to $800 million that just poof disappeared. To this day, nobody knows where it all went. And then you find out that, everybody knew that when Tupac supposedly died, his mother, Ufini Shakur, got, basically was next to kin or whatever and got his whole estate, control of his whole estate. But when she died, nobody was talking about where, when, and who got control of the Tupac stuff after she died a couple years ago. I had to do some digging into that and come to find out it's all the fucking same motherfuckers, all those guys at fucking Interscope Records that Tupac said fuck you to when he went to death row. That was the other thing. All the big guys at Interscope all got fucked out of millions of dollars when Tupac got bailed out of jail by Suge and taken over to death row. Those guys lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And Dr. Dre lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And where does Dr. Dre go directly to after he gets, boom, he's right there with Interscope. Him and Jimmy Iovine want to try and clean up that money, all that hundreds of millions of dollars that was stolen from death row. So what do? They invest it and start themselves a little headphone company. Next thing you know, Beats headphones becomes the big fucking thing. I never had a fucking pair of those things. I never wanted one. I'd never bought a pair. I saw the writing on the wall back then, man. These guys might be famous and be heads of whatever, but they're still fucking criminals and they still do criminal shit. They had to find some way to clean up all that fucking money they stole, that Dr. Dre and all the fucking Interscope guys stole from the coffers of Death Row Records, and they invested in this headphone company. They ended up then selling to Apple. And as a continuation to clean up that money, they donated this $70 million to USC. Now Dr. Dre's daughter from his, fake beard wife, because we all know Dr. Dre, by his own admission, likes to get his quote unquote cheeks blown out because he's a fucking homo. Nothing wrong with that if you're a homo. I'm just saying. I have nothing wrong with. I've never had anything. Known plenty of gay people in my life. But if you're gay, that's fine. What I have offense is these motherfuckers like him walking around, with fake wives and fake kids and acting like they're somebody else. Meanwhile, they're up there, they're taking it up the pooper every chance they get. That I have a problem with. And then some of these guys will even be anti-gay. Like the guy. Remember how many Republican congressmen and senators and anti-gay lobby people have we found? Remember the rentboy.com thing? Looking for I need an 8-inch sculpted cock. Oh, sir, why did you hire a male escort that costs $1,000 a day and has an 8-inch sculpted cock? Oh, I needed him to carry my bags around for me while I was on vacation. Really? Really? That's all. That's the best you got? That's all you got, bud? Best you could come up with, huh? Oh, I hurt my back, and the only person I could get to carry my bags around for me in Cabo San Lucas is, a male escort. Charged $1,000 a day, and suck the chrome off a trailer hitch from across the street, and perfectly sculpted cock. Yeah, come on. Anyway, Dr. Dre, you need to go down. All that's the reason why that whole thing that happened when they were on the set of the Straight Outta Compton movie, where they got Suge set up on a fucking murder beef with running over, that was all orchestrated by Dr. Dre. All orchestrated, and it was orchestrated to discredit Suge Knight, keep him behind bars for life. Suge Knight knows where all the fucking bodies are buried. But because he's been demonized, now he's seen as a murderer and an evil person. All the stories about him dangling fucking Vanilla Ice out of the balcony by his feet. That's funny, if you ask me. Which some parties claim never happened. But the fact of the matter is, Suge Knight is the guy that can blow the doors off all this. And this is why that since the night of Tupac's murder, they got him put in prison. They've continually tried to keep him behind bars since then, because he's openly talked in interviews about Tupac faking his death. He's openly talked in interviews about Dr. Dre and many other high-level rappers being gay. Man, I don't know. I hope this whole thing with this college admission scandal thing, I don't know. I don't know if this is going to be the thing that brings Dre down, but my point is, this is the level his arrogance has gotten to. These guys think they're untouchable. They think they've pulled one over on everybody. They think they're so smart. Nobody's ever going to figure this out. And if anybody does figure it out, everyone's going to believe them anyway. Listen, those days are gone. All I'm saying, I'm putting you on blast, Dre. I used to bump the Chronic. And I remember when that Chronic album came out, 1992, 1993, somewhere in there. I think it was like a sophomore in high school. Hey, I had that record too. Don't get me wrong. My first car I ever had, 1979 Ford Fairmont, motherfucker. Look that shit up. Whatever you find, you won't even find one that looks like mine. Mine had this very unique paint job. It was like sun-dried tomato color or some shit. But, dude, I had the system in that motherfucker. Fuck yeah, dude. I had some Mexicano brothers I knew. Put me a fucking, 2 fucking 15-inch Terminator 15 speaker box in the fucking trunk, 2 Sony 6x9s, a fucking Pyramid Gold fucking power amp, and a Pyramid Gold deck I bought at the pawn shop for $100. Man, I'd fucking roll up. A fucking bass that ate Miami Part 2. I'd be shaking motherfuckers. I could pull up at stoplights and go, and you just see their fucking rear view mirrors just shaking from the bass. Oh yeah. I had the fucking Dr. Dre fucking pot leaf hat. Hadn't even smoked pot in my entire life at that point. Wouldn't for many years after that, but I was rocking the fucking Dre hat, dude. Fuck yeah. I was like, I was rolling around. Oh, dude, rolling around in the fucking Ford Fairmont with the MTX 15s. Roll on down to the Jerry stop and let me ride. Oh, I used to bump that shit. Straight up. No kidding, but you're a scumbag. And I'm putting you on blast, Dre. You need to be taken down. Who knows what else this fucking guy. But these motherfuckers think they're untouchable. Jimmy Iovine started out as a lowly fucking record producer. I mean, they didn't even want, nobody even wanted that guy around. And he ended up, becoming friends with John Lennon. He produced one of John Lennon's solo albums. He produced Springsteen. He produced, Tom Petty, fucking Damn the Torpedoes. Oh, my God. One of the best sounding records ever. Jimmy Iovine, man, is a motherfucker as a producer. And he went from being just a fucking, a guy that produced records to he's one of the, if not, he's one of the top 3 most powerful people in the music industry today, if not the most powerful. And these guys have done this continually again and again, just through absolute criminality. And now, he's all, oh, yeah. Now, the newest story coming out, Dr. Dre's daughter said he was pushing her to go to USC in a 2018 Instagram caption, which resurfaced after they both deleted posts. Yeah, see? They know now they've deleted all this shit now. They know. Bragging about her acceptance on her own merit despite dad's $70 million donation to the school. Dr. Dre's daughter wrote her dad was pressuring her to go to USC in an Instagram caption last year. The post from May 2018 features a photo of Dre with his daughter, truly young. Ugh. Oh, that's the worst. Like fucking Kanye and his Northwest. Ugh. That's the worst, isn't it? Because his real, he's Andre Young is his name. So he named his daughter Truly Young. Ugh. God, you ought to be put in jail just for naming it. Ugh. That's just terrible. Who paired her annoyed expression with the caption, "Dad pushing me to go to USC." It came to light on Monday just as the father-daughter duo removed their social media post bragging about Truly's recent acceptance into USC. After it was revealed that Dre, whose real name is Andre Young, had donated $70 million to the school 6 years ago. The artist, worth an estimated $850 million, had poked fun at the parents implicated in the sweeping admissions scandal, declaring that his daughter, truly young, was accepted without bribing or cheating her way in. Yeah, you don't think a $70 million donation and getting a fucking library named after you didn't, you just sit here and tell me that the people at admissions at USC, that wasn't in their mind at all? Come on. Dre, you're worse than all these other fucking people. They were just using their affluence and their wealth, to pay to play to get their fucking kids in there. Shit's been going on from time immemorial. You had someone killed, built a whole phony bullshit conspiracy around it, had people whacked, had people imprisoned, stole close to $1 billion from the coffers. Yeah, $850 million. Funny that number is awfully fucking close to the exact number of dollars that was stolen from the coffers of Death Row Records immediately following the death or fake death, whatever, of Tupac Shakur and the imprisonment of Suge Knight. That's funny, isn't it? That's almost the exact number. And then you used that money to park it so you could get a nice tax cut. That's all that was a tax cut. Now you're trying to act like you're somehow better than these other people. You're way worse. Man, I got to tell you, Dr. Dre is... He'll probably put a hit out on my ass now for saying this. Dr. Dre needs to go down worse than anybody else. That guy is a criminal. He's a thug. He's a murderer. I mean, on the highest levels. But hey, just like all those big fucking mob bosses, man, all those guys went down too. A lot of them. These guys will get what's coming to them. I hope that this has some kind of effect on him, but sadly, I doubt it will. Jimmy Iovine got all kinds of cancer from that. I'm sure he's ate up with all the guilt of the shit he's done. He's still living. Oh, let me see. What else? What else do I got? This came in from on the YouTube comments from a listener. I don't, as I said in my response to him on YouTube, I don't, I'm happy to talk about whatever you want me to talk about. If you have something you want to hear me discuss, I can't promise you that, listen, I don't have a crystal ball and I don't have access to, that's what drives people crazy. And it drives me crazy too. I don't have access to some secret. Everybody always asks me, they always want to know what the secret to my research is. There is no secret to it, man. I don't use any secret methods or methodologies that aren't available to anybody else in the general public. I mean, the only advantage that I really have is that because I've been looking at this stuff for so long, I feel like I have the ability to, when I'm doing search engine searches for certain pieces of information, it's really all about the word combinations that you put together when you're doing searches. Other than that, I can't really think of anything else, So sometimes, because I've been looking at this stuff for so long, I have stuff to add to topics and whatnot, but, not every time. I try to do my best. But oftentimes I don't know any more than you when it comes to certain stuff, or I don't know any more than what's out there already on a subject. But Cool Hand Kurt J says, Josh, if you get time, can you speak on or help me research the 1984 Brownsville, Texas massacre? George Bush Jr. was and is a suspect in the massacre. No shit, this is reality. Also, Brownsville was very close to Matamoros. We know that story, don't we? Well, I don't know. What are you referring to? I don't know what you're referring to with Matamoros, other than I know that's where, ties into the JFK thing. CIA, Bay of Pigs, anti-Castro Cubans. They were the gun running operation they had. They were running guns down there around Brownsville, Matamoros. Is that what you're talking about? That's the only thing I know of. Well, that ties in with what you're saying. Absolutely. Yeah, I got to be honest with you, though. I don't really have much to offer to you on that subject. I am aware of it. I don't really feel like I have much to offer to you on that subject other than what has already been written and is already out there about it, to be honest with you. Wasn't it called Hell Ranch or something like that? Here's something from online about it. Telling reporters I guess this is when Bush was campaigning in 2000. Telling reporters and critics to stick to the issues that matter. Republican presidential candidate George W. Bush declined to answer questions Monday concerning his alleged involvement in a 1984 Brownsville, Texas mass murder in which 17 people were ritualistically murdered and skinned. Well, here's the thing. We know for a fact. I'll tell you. Listen, this is the only thing I have really to add. I came across this coincidentally enough, just as I was talking about earlier in the show, when I was doing my research into the Council for National Policy, when I first started that, and working on the films, The Secret Right, Volume 1 and Volume 2. In Volume 2, I talked about Lawrence King. and the whole Franklin cover-up thing. And, he was well known. He had this, harem of underage boys and girls and, whole sex trafficking thing, and all the Republicans and all the rest of them being involved in this. And I've talked about how also in 1984, which is interesting, in the same year as this whole Hell Ranch thing took place in Brownsville, essentially what this was a CIA, another CIA cult. Listen, the cults and CIA go hand in hand. I can't name a cult that wasn't in some way connected to the CIA. I mean, the Branch Davidians, that whole thing was a fraud. Those people were actually, Koresh was working hand in hand with the CIA. Why do you think your boy Jones was down there when all that shit was popping off? Whether or not Bush Jr. was involved in it or not, I don't know. I don't have any information and don't know of any information to prove that 100% other than what's already been out there and said about it. But as I said, the way I found out about this is because in the same year, 1984, this happened, was when they had the Republican National Convention, the 1984 Republican National Convention here, right here, where I'm sitting right now in Dallas, Texas. And they had the party, the after party that they had after the Republican National Convention was held, where they announced the nomination of Ronald Reagan and George Bush Sr. for re-election that year. They had the after party out at South Fork Ranch, and I used to live out there not far from South Fork Ranch. And it's widely reported that Lawrence King was there. He was in Dallas. He was at South Fork Ranch at the party they had after the Republican National Convention. He was there with his harem of underage boys and girls. And there are reports, and I've even talked to local people that lived out there at the time when it happened and have property around there, around that area. They all saw, they found evidence of, the next day after the party, they found evidence out in the woods of satanic rituals being held out there. Evidence of blood, whether it was real or fake, and, pentagrams and stuff like that. So, in my opinion, even though I didn't talk about this in the Secret Right Volume 2, I think that whole Hell Ranch thing and the whole satanic ritual sacrifice thing is absolutely 100% connected to the Lawrence King underage thing. It's definitely connected in with the CIA. It's connected in with it very well could have been one of those events that Bush Sr. was put in, or Bush Jr. was put in charge of. Listen, blood sacrifice is a big part of a lot of these guys moving up the ladder. They got to have something. They like to have something on these guys, a death, multiple deaths for their operatives. So they always have something to hang over them and control them as they push them up the ladder, and they know they've always got something over them to control them. So, again, I wish I had more to tell you about the whole Hell Ranch thing. I don't have anything more than what's already been put out there on it. Another interesting thing about the 84 Republican National Convention, that fucking cocksucker Lee Greenwood, God bless the USA. Ugh. The worst propaganda bullshit song ever written. I remember, this is weird, and make of this what you will, but I remember hearing probably around that time when that Republican National Convention here, I would have been 8. I remember hearing back in the 80s, back when that whether it was from somebody at school or an older cousin or relative or something, I remember hearing people say back in those days that Lee Greenwood was a Satanist. And I've never seen proof one way or the other, but every time I would see that guy singing God Bless the USA, and it's just, he has like those, he kind of just has those child molester eyes, I don't know. But I definitely think the whole Lawrence King child sex slave thing and the whole Hell Ranch thing with Bush and Bush Sr. and the CIA and taking place down there in Brownsville, Matamoros, the CIA operations they had down there with the anti-Castro Cubans during the whole Bay of Pigs thing. Absolutely, there. I think 100% there's a connection to that. But again, time after time again, whether it be the Moonies, I talked about that in the Secret Right Volume 1, how the Moon, because Reverend Sung Myung Moon was related to the, we had the CMP members that were Moonies. So that tied in. Time after time after time, Jonestown. I mean, you've got CIA and Special Forces connections. Well, that's. I mean, it just again and again and again. So many of these, all of these cults. I suspect that what's it called, Nivixum or whatever it's called, that sex cult thing. I suspect that absolutely has connections that tie into the CIA as well. Especially when you look at the fact that these had famous Hollywood actors and stuff in it. Absolutely, man. Again, there's definitely, I understand your interest in that Hell Ranch thing, and I think it absolutely ties in with the Lawrence King child sex slave stuff, the stuff that, like they did at Bohemian Grove, the Johnny Gosch thing, the kidnapping of Johnny Gosch, and then Johnny Gosch becoming Jeff Gannon and being in the White House press corps lobbing fucking softballs at W. Bush. I mean, all it's connected, man. All of that is all fucking interconnected, but, having absolute proof and being able to prove that 100%, it's just like any of this stuff, man. It's where there's smoke, there's fire, but these guys have been covering up this stuff for years. But again, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. I believe beyond any shadow of a doubt, whether it's through me and what I expose or what somebody else exposes or anything else, all this stuff's going to come to light eventually. I really honestly thought, with the death of Bush Sr., we would have had a lot more. I figured we were going to get a lot more revelations of stuff coming out right after he died. And really, we haven't heard anything, which I was surprised because that's what I've heard for years. Y'all probably heard that too. I've been hearing that for years, that when, especially stuff pertaining to the Kennedy assassination, that, higher up people have been saying for years, as people in the know have been saying that, wait till Poppy dies. Wait till Poppy Bush dies. And that's when we're going to find it most, because supposedly a lot of the stuff that's been redacted for many years has been redacted while he was still alive. That's why Trump didn't put out all that stuff that, remember they were supposed to release all the Kennedy stuff and it was all still redacted and really didn't tell us anything we didn't already know. So, I don't know. Still waiting on that. Anyway, folks, that's going to do it for tonight. And this is our fundraising week. Again, talked about that enough in the middle of the show. You know what to do. Make it happen. Get some downloads. Get a subscription to the archive membership. Make a contribution to the, again, 20 people donating $100 this week. It's all it would take. 40 of you buy all 5 parts of Mystery Hollywood. That would be amazing too. But I need all your help, man. I need it. Because, there's just, everybody else is sold out, gone the wayside, become a Trumpy, become a white supremacist. I'm the only guy that's stayed the course and been here on the side of nothing else but the truth. I love you all. We'll see you next time. Take care.